Private schools and academies were first established in colonial days for the children of the elite. If it was possible, low-income families were sending their children to homes of neighbors where mothers or other women in the home would teach them how to read. It wasn't until the 1800s that public schools began teaching children to read the Bible, develop high morals, and become good citizens. Today's schools teach the basic needs of literacy and computation, and they also reflect on society high ideals such as universal education for all children. They ask the questions: what should be taught? Should we prepare students with knowledge and skills that we'll need for a future job? Should they learn to appreciate the arts, be healthy, active adults, and live effectively in a global, independent world? Our own philosophical and political perspectives help determine our views of the roles of the schools and the definition of good education. Citizens and educators alike disagree on whether schools should primarily support democratic equality, social effectiveness, and social mobility. Advocates of democratic equality believe that all students should be exposed to liberal arts education and learn to be productive citizens in democracy. Proponents of social efficiency believe that schools should serve the private sector by preparing students for the optimal role in society as determined by testing and other measures. People for social mobility view education as an asset that can be accumulated over time and used for social competition. Achieving these credentials could provide us with a competitive advantage in securing a desirable position in society, as can be seen in the higher salaries and prestige that most college graduates receive. State and national standards help provide the framework for what students should know and be able to do academically to be proficient. There are standards for the core classes, but there's also standards for art, health, physical education as well. Common Core standards help identify the essential requirement levels of knowledge and skills in English, language arts, and literacy, in history and social studies, science, technology subjects, as well as math. Most schools have revised their curriculum to be standard-based so they can be tested annually to determine if they're at grade level. Some school systems' reputations and their state funding are dependent on how well students perform on these standard-based tests. School personnel such as school teachers and principals are held accountable for students' achievements based on these students' performance on standardized tests. Teachers and principals know that their future employment could depend on how their students score on the state's test. With standard-based tests, some schools and teachers are preparing their students for the test and teaching to the test, and neglecting areas that are not tested, like social studies, science, and other art classes and physical education classes. Preparing students to contribute to the economic growth of the nation has been a major purpose of schools for over a century. Many different leaders cite education as a very important way in both maintaining a competitive national economy and reducing income inequality. Many have blamed the education system for students not performing in the top of the international tests of knowledge and skills, for students not developing critical thinking and problem skills needed for a growing number of jobs, and for not preparing enough students in science, technology, and engineering and math skills or STEM field skills. Employer skills most important: work ethic, teamwork, decision-making, critical thinking, computer literacy, and basic reading and mathematics. Business leaders call for today's students to master basic core subjects and develop global awareness, civic literacy, health literacy, environmental literacy, and financial and economic business and entrepreneurship literacy skills. Citizenship requires citizens who are informed, thoughtful, participate in their communities, are involved in political processes, and possess moral and civic virtues. The civic mission of schools believes developing citizens to participate in democracy has been a core purpose for the public schools and from its inception. The result of effective civic learning is citizens who are more likely to vote, discuss political as well as volunteer to work on community projects. Preparing students to be active citizens include involving them actively in democratic processes as a part of school experiences, in the classroom discussions of current events and controversial issues, classroom instruction, service learning that provides students opportunity for community service, extracurricular activities, school government, and simulations of democratic processes such as voting. School development. School can provide opportunities for students to develop social skills by interacting with others. This will allow students to learn to respect others and learn rules for working appropriately with their peers and adults. Schools need to continue to encourage appropriate behavior that is constantly enforced by teachers and other school professionals. Schools need to give students opportunities to work with other students of diverse racial, gender, language, religious, or ability groups. This will give students a chance to help students learn to cooperate with and support each other. Cultural transmission. Schools around the world transmit the culture of their nation to young people so they can both maintain it and pass it on to the next generation. Teaching history with an emphasis on the importance of events and heroes allows students to learn the importance of patriotism and loyalty. Hidden curriculum reflects and reinforces the values of national culture and the principles and standards and equalities the culture endorses. Culture provides a blueprint for how we think, feel, and behave in a society. It gives us rules in order to help us understand shared language, nonverbal communication skills, and ways we think and knowing. Culture is learned, shared, and adapted. Enculturation happens when parents, guardians, religious leaders, teachers, television shows, and other neighbors teach us the culture and its acceptable norms of behavior. When schools use a different language or linguistic patterns from that used at home of students, or when students' behaviors have different meanings at home than at school, dissonance between the school and the home can occur. Culture is not stagnant, it is dynamic, continuously adapting to serve the needs of the group. Dominant culture, the legal system, democratic elections, and middle-class values of American society, which serve as a foundation for many of our institutions and traditions, are based on the Western and Northern European traditions. Over time, cultures have been shared and have evolved from many other cultures that voluntarily or involuntarily immigrated and have brought their own culture from around the world. The dominant culture of the United States is primarily in the ways of the middle-class families and how they live. Individualism and freedom are core values that undergird the dominant culture of the United States. What are some of the characteristics of the common culture? Universal education and literacy for all citizens are valued. Our job or career is important to be recognized as successful. Fun is usually a relief from work. Technology in all of its forms, from cell phones to a computer, have a great impact on our lives. Achievement and success are highly valued. Cultures of families. Students arrive at school with a tradition, a language, and behaviors of their family culture. Students' ethnicity may be their primary culture identification. Speak English at school, but at home they speak their native language. Families can be poor or healthy, which affects the students' health and well-being and their ability to engage effectively in schools. Some families have been influenced by discrimination that they face because of their race, ethnicity, immigration status, language, religion, and sexual orientation. Getting to know your students can help make schooling and curriculum more real and authentic for students. Respect their families and communities, participate in community activities and celebration, volunteering at community groups to coach or tutor or to serve food at homeless shelters, and participate in school activities. Helps teachers get to know their students. Culture of the school. Community members expect schools to transmit the culture of the U.S. to younger generations. However, educators do not always agree on whose culture should be transmitted. Most people agree it should be the dominant culture, even though diverse racial, ethnic, language, and religious groups have their own cultures with different traditions, experiences, and histories. Conservative politicians argue that schools should ignore diversity. They believe that all students should learn the common heritage and adopt the dominant culture. Multicultural theorists and educators present another perspective. They argue that students' diversity enriches the school's community and society, and so we should teach all cultures. Religious schools, homeschools, and ethnocentric schools believe the curriculum should be built around the histories of all families in the group. That's because curriculum usually supports the dominant culture and the current ideologies, political, and economic order of society. However, some families do not believe in other people's religion and do not want their students around that or exposed to other values of other cultures. Culture of the school. A school's culture also has culture that generally reflects the nation's dominant culture and the community in which it is located. Schools, climate, and ethos provide meaning for its students, teachers, school officials, and parents. Schools also have unwritten rules and norms for behavior, including how students interact with teachers and others. They develop their traditions and rituals related to athletics, extracurricular clubs, graduation exercises, school, social events, and other ways teachers interact with their students and parents. Schools also have mascots, cheerleaders, school colors, school songs that distinguish them from other schools. Schools also have developed reputations for academic achievement and proudness on the football, basketball, or other sports teams, safe or dangerous environments, and are influenced greatly by religious and cultures of their children's families. All of this creates the school's culture.